Missed it then. Never mind.
If it's still current, we can catch up later or tomorrow.
I think it will be covered in this meeting, actually.
Okay.
I was going to have a pre-chat with you, but doesn't matter for now.
Okie.
Is it about the glutton, George?
Oh, did you see my glutton?
Yes.
What I Want for Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that Christmas song. I was thinking of getting a little video clip of the Christmas song, What I Want for Christmas, or All I Want for Christmas.
Yeah, All I Want for Christmas, yes.
Is you, but actually, it's actually a glutton, or as John Ward calls it, he calls it a gruffalo.
Sometimes I'm told, George, you regret what you ask for Christmas or wish for Christmas. So, just be careful.
I know you're quite right, Madam Mayor, because if I got given a glutton for Christmas, it would have to go in my shed, and that would probably have to make my motorbike go out on the drive or something. That would be terrible.
Or even interpret glutton as lots and lots of food, and you'd be overwhelmed with food packages or something.
Well, apparently it does pick up damp and wet leaves, which is quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm hoping that somebody will listen and dip into their pocket and make a decision on it fairly soon.
Well, Waverley are thinking about it.
The more stuff it picks up, George, the more stuff you've got to take somewhere and get rid of.
Yeah, I know, but it's George, the thing is whether or not the town clerk thinks he's naughty or nice.
Right, I didn't catch that, Sally, sorry.
I said it's whether or not the town clerk thinks you've been naughty or nice.
Naughty.
You'd have to ask the town clerk that.
If Councillor Hess is going to be a glutton, I'll have to be a slave.
But I mean, I hope
It's gone 6:30, and we clearly are quorate. Are we expecting anybody else?
Apologies, Madam Mayor, but we should start.
Right. Should. Yes, please. Okay. Well, you all look very well, and it's great to see Michaela, who's not always to be with us. So, welcome, Michaela.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And if we can start with prayers, we've got the Reverend Sandy Clark with us. Welcome, Sandy. I see you on Farnham Connects, but it's nice to see you in a different arena.
Thank you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, bless the faithful dedication of your servants here. Inspire them and gather them to be of one heart and one mind as they serve this community to your glory. And we pray for ourselves and our town. Keep us, good Lord, under the shadow of your mercy in this time of uncertainty and distress brought about by the pandemic. In Christmas season, when celebrations are the norm, yet many are unable to participate in their usual way. Sustain and support the anxious and fearful, and lift up all who are brought low, that we may rejoice in your comfort, knowing that nothing can separate us from your love in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
May the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you this Advent. Amen.
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 Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to just tiptoe out while you talk about finance.
Right. I was about to say, please stay with us as long as you're able, but I know how very busy everyone is at this time. So thank you very much for finding the time to be with us and start our meeting. Thank you, Sandy.
Bye now.
Bye. Town Clerk, any apologies?
None received, Madam Mayor.
No. And disclosures of interest other than those which are clearly noted here?
Madam Mayor, yes, I need to declare an interest for the items that are under exempt Appendix H relating to the Town Clerk's appraisal, and also I will have an interest as a potential beneficiary if you decide to go down the appointment of, you go down the cycle scheme.
Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes. Do you wish me to sign as a correct record the minutes of the last meeting held on the 22nd of October, or does anyone have any observations, please? I see none at all.
All good.
So thank you, those are agreed. Incidentally, I should have said we've got into the habit of using the hand sign when we're in debate, which is at the bottom of the screen. So I'd like to do that again this evening, and it's under participants. It helps us with our debates that people can speak in rotation of when they wish to. Item 4, questions and statements by the public. I see that we do have a member of the public. Welcome, David Wild, who knows us well, and we know him well. We've received no written questions. David, are you here to say something to the council or merely to observe us?
To ask a question, I can.
Make a statement. Are you here for that reason or just attending our meeting?
To ask a question.
Right, please, go ahead.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, do you know we can't see you?
I think you'll manage that with that deprivation without too much difficulty.
Right.
I'm quite happy to ask. And I'm doing so because more than one person has asked me to bring this up. I'm a fan of Farnham Town Council and have said so. But if you are vulnerable or need someone to talk to or not on the internet, it's hard not to be discouraged when you come to the locality office and find the doors locked. Can you do anything to help?
Right, I think we can give you an answer straight away on that. Town Clerk, can you answer on that situation?
Yes, I can, Madam Mayor, and Mr. Wild, as councillors will also know, we have closed the offices through the lockdown. We were due to reopen the office shortly before Waverley Borough Council closed their service in the council offices. And we then went into the second period of closure. We've had a discussion within the leader, the mayor and I, and we decided it would not be appropriate to reopen the office directly at this stage, but we would look to do so in the new year. And there are several reasons for that, but we are providing a service for anyone who needs a service from the town council if they call and book an appointment. We can then make sure that it's a COVID secure environment for them. And we've been doing this regularly for pension signings and providing other advice. If any member of the public arrives at the council office, we will see them. And there is a telephone number there to enable them to do that, and they can come to the back of the office. It's one of those things that's quite tricky. It's a balance to be struck. And actually, I have to say that this week it's not been helped by the fact that we had a significant water leak on the ground floor. And if you come into the office at the moment, it does smell rather grim, I have to say. But suffice to say that we want to provide a full service to all of our residents, and we'll be happy to help them in whatever way we can.
Are you satisfied with the answer, David?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I understand it's just a difficult situation, isn't it? So
it is.
I'm not coming in a quibblesome mood. It's just for one or two people, it can be upsetting.
Well, I think that if they could phone, as the town clerk says, if they can phone the office beforehand, then yes, they of course would be admitted and probably into one of the interview rooms at the back. And if they turn up at the offices then if they make themselves known or hopefully have a mobile telephone and can phone the number, then they will be admitted by the back door. So we wouldn't wish to keep anybody away who needs help and support.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you very much for coming to us this evening. Thank you. Right, if we go on to item 5, which is Mayor's announcements. This strange environment of lockdown and temporary release continues. None of us will forget 2020. Since the last council meeting, the staff have continued to organise events within the restrictions that exist, and I have supported them at all online or in person at the various events which have taken place. And I commend them because they work extremely hard in order to achieve what is achieved. We've continued to have the monthly farmers market, and the people who have stalls there are just so grateful that it continues, and also the people who attend it. We have had the Christmas switch on of lights, which, as you all know, was beams of light from each of the communities. It was a dreadful evening. It rained, it was awful, but it went ahead, and people came out and were taking photographs because they were so delighted with what was happening. And I know a lot of you were manning those beams of light, so thank you all too. Personally, I've actually communicated with the young and the elderly. I've Zoomed with the 11th Farnham Beavers with a PowerPoint presentation that I gave on the work of the mayor. And they asked questions like, why do you wear those clothes? And what have you been doing during coronavirus? And there was one extremely bright little boy, 7 years of age, who was so experienced on his laptop that he actually could come onto the shared screen that we had for the PowerPoint. And, you know, we had to try and get him to close down his shared screen so that we could continue. There's some really bright kids out there, I can tell you. And at the other end of the scale, I've just switched on the external Christmas lights and a Christmas tree at a care home in Farnham. Life goes on. I've recently joined Farnham Round Table with Father Christmas on his sleigh as he travels round Farnham, making collections for the needy. I joined Farnham Assist as they blessed the food packs that were being distributed to the elderly. And of course, we all observed Remembrance Sunday. We had the War Memorial for young people on the Friday, which was extremely poignant and moving with their contributions and their thoughts, and with the British Legion on Sunday, where we had a service of remembrance, very similar to the norm, but obviously with fewer people. And again, I know that many of you joined your local war memorials and laid wreaths there. And we've still events to look forward to. We're doing the recording of the Civic Carol service with the Farnham Youth Choir on Saturday afternoon evening. It's being filmed, and all the precautions that are necessary are being taken. We're being joined by the Lord Lieutenant and various other people who will do readings. And it will be coming on Saturday, the 23rd, well, I'm not sure it's a Saturday, but it's the 23rd of December, and you'll all have details, because I think it will go out on Facebook, I think, and it will be a film of that carol service. Life goes on, and life goes on very proactively in Farnham. This is our last council meeting before Christmas, so I want to wish you and your families a happy and healthy Christmas and New Year. Thank you. Now, questions by members, item 6. Do we have a question this evening from a member?
Question from me.
Councillor Hess, would you like to go ahead and pose your question, please?
It's actually printed in the agenda if anybody wants to read it, but I'll read it out. Can the town clerk please give an update on the proposal that came before council on the 30th of July for the relocation of the children's playground in Gostrey Meadow, the building of a cafe to be operated by the pupils of the Ridgeway School on the site of the disused bowling club on the south side of the River Way, and the proposal to build an additional bridge across the river. Is this still a priority given two factors? The first being the almost unanimous opposition to the proposal by a considerable number of users of the playground polled on Facebook in October. There were about 70 people who responded. And the second being the budgetary constraints which are likely to result from the COVID-19 pandemic. Could this issue be reviewed in early 2021? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hess. Town Clerk, can we ask you for a response, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hess, for your question. You'll be aware that the Town Council has only provided landlord consent for the use of Gostrey Meadow for the building of a cafe. The Ridgeway School proposal is in their hands to progress, and we await further discussions and a formal application to see the details proposed. Councillors will understand that the Town Council does not create policy or priorities based on partial information garnered on social media. The informal survey referenced by Councillor Hest followed a confidential Town Council task group meeting when potential options were being discussed, but nothing has been decided at this stage. The Town Council will, of course, consult on any proposal were one to emerge. The Town Council is currently refurbishing the current playground, repairing and updating obsolete equipment. Further plans to improve the playground and Gostrey Meadow with some funding earmarked for developments in the town will be discussed in due course. Councillors will, of course, review all proposals coming forward in light of resources available and whether funding required can be met from the revenue budget, earmarked reserves or other sources. That's the end of my response. Thank you.
This question by members is covered by Standing Order 9.5, and Standing Order 9.5 says that each question will be put and answered without discussion, but the person questioned may decline to answer. But an answer has been given, but there is no facility for further discussion on this item. Thank you, members. We move to part 1, which is items for decisions. And item 7 is working group notes. And I call upon the lead members of those working groups to present notes of those meetings. The first is tourism and events held on the 4th of November. I call upon Councillor Earwaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, councillors. I'm happy to present the notes of the Tourism and Events Working Group, which you can find on pages 13 to 16 of your papers. There are no recommendations, just a few updates for you. As Madam Mayor has already told you, the last farmers market this year takes place this Sunday, the 13th of December, from 10 o'clock to 1:30 in Central Car Park. And this Christmas farmers market is a little bit unusual. We've included a craft section this time, and also we've included a Santa's grotto. You'll remember that we've actually cancelled the Christmas market, which normally takes place in Castle Street, the borough, and uses the hotel as well. So as a last minute thought, we've included a Santa's grotto, which will be social distance and coronavirus secure. So that's happening this Sunday in Central Car Park. You should all have received a brochure about Christmas in Farnham 2020, which was delivered by the post office. And all those Christmas events this year have been generously sponsored by Abbeyfield and Kid Rapinay. So we're very grateful for them for supplying funds to allow that to go ahead. And last but not least, the online transactional website, We Are Farnham, is now up and running. And this provides an online shopping experience for traders in Farnham. So that completes my talk about the notes. There are no recommendations at council. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
I'm looking at my board and I can see no hands. So I'm assuming, Councillor Earwaker, there are no questions. Thank you very much indeed. I call upon Councillor Neil, who will be presenting Strategy and Finance, held on the 1st of December at Appendix C. Councillor Neil.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members. Thank you. Okay, so you have the notes in front of you, I'm sure. The first thing that was considered in this last meeting was the current situation on expenditure on the budget. At the moment, we are spending okay. You know, the accounts are in a positive position, even though we haven't been receiving the income that we would normally expect to receive at this point in time. So we're going to talk about the accounts for the next year later on, so I won't say any more on that at the moment. The town clerk reported that we've had the first internal audit, and that's attached with your papers here. So there's a recommendation to council on this subject. I'm going to hand over that to the Mayor, please.
Sorry, are we going through the recommendations one by one, Councillor Neil? Yes?
Yes, I think we take this one, if you would, on the auditors.
Yes.
report.
Yes. The recommendation is that the internal auditor's interim report be noted. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
And we also covered in that session, just to remind members that all payments can be viewed, of course, on the website that are made by council. We don't bring them all to go through in these meetings, and unless anyone disagrees with that, that's how we will carry on. So the next item that we covered was to talk about the council strategy review, which we held a month or two ago, and the minutes of that meeting have been circulated. I think everyone's content with what is in those. A few points were brought out. The importance of UCA to the town, which we all agree. And because of that, we want to invite the new Deputy Vice Chancellor, Catherine Harper, to our meeting. I'll come back to that in a tick. Also, we generally thought that most of what I'll be doing next year will be, a continuation of what we've been doing this year, noting that obviously the infrastructure program that we're heavily involved in now is having quite an impact on our resources and our workload. So there's some adjustments in the strategy to do with that. What else so in terms of additional things to do next year, the infrastructure program, of course, we're talking about. Local government reorganisation is a topic which has been brought to us. It's gone into abeyance a little bit at the moment, but it might be coming back next year. And we want our members to take a view on our position here before then. So we are meeting in about a week's time, I forget the date, to have a general council discussion briefing on that subject. So if you've got any ideas, please bring them to that meeting. And also next year, we're remembering that we've got the World Craft activities. We've got recovery from the COVID-19 situation to think about. And we need to be looking at what we're doing on the green spaces that we're taking over at the moment from Waverley. So that was the broad situation relating to the strategy review. And if anyone's got any questions, please come. If not, I'll ask Madam Mayor to go for the recommendation, please, regarding that we accept this vision and adopt it.
Yes, the strategy meeting in October revised the vision statement, which is now that the council should be and be seen to be the influential and effective voice for Farnham, bringing together the views of all organisations for the good of the town. And secondly, Farnham Town Council aims to be an effective and efficient organisation providing high quality, sustainable services and facilities for the residents and businesses of Farnham, whilst addressing the climate change with a strong and respected voice representing Farnham's best interests. That is now the vision statement for Farnham Town Council, which it is recommended that it is adopted as a revised revision statement. Are there any questions of the leader, or can we take a vote? Right, I've got no hands up. Can we vote? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll carry on to the task groups, if that's okay. Item 6, the infrastructure planning group. The main progress there is on the neighbourhood plan. It's nearly finished, and when it's done, it'll be on the website and will be published. And the design statement, that's in final stages. It's not quite finished yet, and the same will happen to that when it's done. Moving on to the, unless anyone's got any questions, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Leader. No, I just really wanted to stress the need to get some pressure on here. I think everything's being diverted, and I can understand why up to a point, but we have got appeals coming in, and if we do not have that up-to-date neighbourhood plan up and running, ready, we are going to lose more appeals. The design statement, we really need to get on with that. The current one is working, but because of all the changes to planning, we really need to get those up. So any pressure you can put on in between looking at roads, I'd be very grateful.
Thank you, Councillor. I take your point. I will try and make sure we do that. Anything else? If not, I'll move on to the infrastructure projects task group. Would anyone of the councillors on that task group wish to cover this point? If not, I will quickly note that
John?
Yes, okay.
Well, I think your summary covers it pretty well, actually. So I've got nothing to add particularly.
Okay, well, the summary in the notes points out that improvements to the bid for the improvements to Gostree Meadow are being prepared to be ready for submission to Waverley in January, by the end of January.
Leader, you have Sally Dixon.
Okay, Councillor Dixon, go ahead. Unmute.
No, sorry, I put my hand up by mistake.
Okay, I'll carry on. So there's an instruction going to Inverd, is it? Which shall help to support the green flag application that goes with this. Moving on to the assets task group. I'll cover that unless anyone else of that one wants to come forward, the lead on that. Okay. So it was agreed to recommend to council that we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the War Memorial next year. And to do with that, we're just going to do some slight improvements in the area in terms of hedging before that happens. It was agreed that we won't be taking over the Shottlemill Cemetery in Hazelmere that was suggested that we might from Waverley, because it looks as if it's got too many liabilities from our point of view. And we've been talking about refurbishing of the toilets in Gostrey and in the town centre in the car park. And it was agreed that we're going to get the consultants, Drake and Canamere, to give us a view on what should happen there. And just to note for councillors' information, we're very keen on using solar panels where we can. And that's being looked at. And
I think you've gone, no, have you gone on to, sorry, I've interrupted you, I beg your pardon.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to come back in a minute. And the other point that was raised about village gateways into Recklesham, putting some signage up, some rather attractive signage to do that. So those are broadly the topics covered in the assets task group. Your notes are there, a bit more detailed than what I've just said. There is a recommendation there, Madam Mayor, please, relating to the centenary event, please.
Right. I think there are some questions. Top of the list, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it's not really a question. It was just that we had the discussion on these village gateways, and it was suggested that, you know, other areas should take Recklesham's lead and get, you know, start looking at this. The other thing that we did in the past, and we perhaps ought to redo, are some village signs. If we're going to defend our town on the individual characteristics of its areas, you know, Recklesham has one, obviously. The Bourne has one. You know, try and get sort of some actual village signs as well as the gateways, so that we are actually saying, and our documents back it, that, you know, the town is built up of its character areas. So I think we could probably put that into the mix. I think basically as ward councillors, we should get a bit more, say parochial, don't know what the word is, but you know what I mean, really see if we can identify each of our independent character areas, so that we're, you know, putting down a marker for whenever we have I keep going on about appeals, but it's appeals that affects the town forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Hess next, I think.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's an excellent idea that Councillor Coburn just proposed. I think it would be really nice to have signs for the villages. It would give them more identity to people who might not be familiar with the area. Obviously, local people know that you're entering Recklesham or Rowledge, but I think it's a lovely idea for other people coming into the area. It looked really nice. What I wanted to actually ask was about the toilets in Gostrey Meadow, because when I joined Farnham Town Council in 2018, when Councillor Coburn was leader, at that time there was a proposal for complete new toilets, actually, and I don't know what's happened to that proposal. We're talking about refurbishment and rejigging them and building a little bit on the end to cover up a control box or something. But I just wonder what the original plan was for complete new toilets, state of the art, and whether that's completely gone away, you know, whether that's been scrapped. Could somebody update that for us, please? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Shall I make a start on that, Madam Mayor?
Yes, please, Town Clerk.
And Councillor Atfield, as Chair of Assets, may wish to add something to it.
Yes.
There were various proposals that have been considered. There wasn't ever a proposal that was agreed, which was to knock down the toilets and start afresh. The original proposal was to add side of the toilets on the right side, which would supplement the single ladies and disabled toilet that's there at the moment. This then became complicated because of the proposed land transfer. We got agreement for the transfer of that portion of land next to the toilets. But then councillors started to talk about other matters which would impact on the development of the toilets, one of which was the request that you referenced earlier about the building of the cafe. It seemed not the best thing to just steam ahead with investing heavily in the toilets if we could get a better deal by working with a potential cafe creation where we might have a higher number of toilets in addition to the cafe, which would cost less money than a small supplementary cubicle next to the existing toilets. So I think this is one of those things that will be picked up in more detail through this review that is now being commissioned, and also something that will perhaps get referenced in the ID Verdi Green Flag report, because one of the things the Assets Group has commissioned is a sort of management plan for Gostrey Meadow that would talk about the wider needs. It's one of those inevitable consequences of sort of step changes that happen, and then it becomes beyond the point of sense to progress what had been sort of envisaged previously. So it's been deferred, but not forgotten.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Atfield, did you wish to come in at all from the Assets Group point of view?
Yes, I've got nothing further to add other than what the Town Clerk has said. We did look at some proposals which we had in mind for a complete refurbishment of the toilets in Gostrey Meadow, but at this point in time, subject to the other changes there, they are on hold, but we are doing a comprehensive thorough clean of the existing toilet block there. And we're looking at the toilets in the central car park to try and bring those up to a modern standard in the interim period to get that underway. But the toilets in Gostrey Meadow have not been forgotten. They will not be forgotten, along with the playground. And as you know, we are currently upgrading the playground, doing some changes to the old equipment which needs replacing, and getting the toilets up to scratch, ready for the spring programme.
Thank you. I see we still have Councillor Dixon.
Just to say that I agree with Councillor Coburn. I do think village signs would be quite a good idea. One suggestion I would say that would work particularly well in Hale and Heath End. We already have 2 notice boards in Hale and Heath End, so perhaps we could add, I've seen the very attractive village signs that they have in Weybourne, and we could perhaps add the village signs to the notice boards. I would also add that the specific problem that we think Councillor Dunsmore have done such a great job in doing is with the village gateway signs, you normally have a speed limit like a 30 mile per hour or 20 mile per hour highlighted. And also the gateway signs that have been chosen by Councillor Dunsmore are well recognised in the region for being the entrance to a village. And so in Hale and Heath End, where we have straight roads which have actually got a 30 mile per hour zone, which is only recognised in its absence, it would be really good to have the village gateways, and we're hoping that that will be a result of the infrastructure project, if not before. But yes, I think I totally agree. For Hale and Heath End, both village signs and gateway signs would be amazing.
Thank you. Councillor Neil, would you like me to go to the recommendation to council?
Yes, does the town clerk or Ian McCready just want to update us on how the Gostrey work is going on at the moment?
Ian McCready can do so.
Ian.
Councillors. Just to let you know, the main power from SSE is now installed into Gostrey, and hopefully by tomorrow afternoon, all the brand new power points around the meadow will be live and active. Next up is to redo the surface around there, which will be new tarmac, and one or two other areas within Gostrey as well. The play area is getting refurbished as we speak, with levelling of the surfacing so far. One or two bits of play equipment have arrived, and we're going to be putting those in place and making sure everything is fit and looking good, plus a new coat of paint on the fence. So it's progressing well, and hopefully it will be open soon.
Thank you, Ian. So I'll go to Madam Mayor for that recommendation, please.
I'll return to it. The recommendation to council: 1, Farnham commemorates the centenary of the Gostrey Meadow War Memorial. 2, Farnham Town Council refurbishes the War Memorial ahead of the anniversary and replaces the laurel hedging with yew, with costs met from the 2021 budget. To inform Waverley Borough Council of the decision not to take on Shottermill Cemetery, and to instruct Drake and Canimire regarding the refurbishment of the toilets. Are those recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
One small point, Madam Mayor, we're not forgetting the toilets in the heart, are we?
I'm not quite sure whether the Hart ones are included with the central car park ones or not. Councillor Dunsmore. Councillor Dunsmore, can you demute?
Yeah, takes a few minutes to find the buttons. We're looking at a slightly different proposal for the Hart car park. We'd definitely be looking to refurbish them, but we're thinking of potentially more of a theme on craft. I don't think they get used as much as the others. We're not saying we're going to get rid of them, but we just think we might do something slightly different.
Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of thought and work is going into the toilets, and rightly so. It was one of the vibrant complaints I had during the last election. So those recommendations are all agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Back to you, Councillor Neil.
So we're moving on to Wellbeing Task Group. Councillor Earwaker has taken this over. Councillor Earwaker, do you want to say a few words on where you are on that at the moment?
Yep, I'm pleased to announce that we've got our £25,000 for Tackling Loneliness project, and the steering group will be meeting in January to discuss how we're going to go about spending that £25,000. We've got a steering group which consists of members of Farnham Connects, and so we'll be meeting regularly to steer the project through and spend that £25,000. So good news.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll carry on, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Younger Persons Task Group. I think there's a meeting coming up there on 15th of December. So does anyone want to make any comments on that, or shall I just move on? If there's no comments, I'll move on.
Councillor Mirrlees, can you unmute, please? Thank you.
Just to say that this got stopped, basically, fell foul of COVID, and it was motoring along quite nicely. But I think hopefully we're having a meeting in a couple of days, and we'll get everything, all the communities back together again and start the process again. I know that I was contacted on Nextdoor by a parent who said his kids would be very interested in this, and also how could they get involved. So I know there's enthusiasm for young people to get and view their ideas about what they want and to be more involved. So I think it's just a question of picking things up again. It just got halted by what's happened. So yeah, hopefully that'll move on from now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll carry on, Madam Mayor. HR panel. The big event for this recently has been the appraisal of the town clerk. He hasn't been appraised for, I think it's since 2017, so it is due, and it has been carried out by the panel. Maybe Councillor Atfield would like to make a few words here.
We have separate minutes of the meeting of the HR group when the details of the appraisal were sent, and we have those attached for this evening. Councillor Atfield, did you want to speak at this point or wait for your meeting panel?
I was just going to point out that they are covered in the exempt item later in the evening.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll carry on to the Farnham Conservation Area Management Plan. Councillor Coburn, would you like to summarise?
I don't think there's anything to add. Thank you, Leader. Everything's there, and we've got a recommendation, which I hope we get to move on. But no, there's nothing extra to the page. Thanks.
Okay, I'm happy to go straight to the recommendation, Madam Mayor, if you like.
Yes, the recommendation is that a task group be established with external input for the proposed sculpture for the Maltings Riverside, using the UCA Section 106 contribution and any additional funds. Are there any questions on that?
I do.
Councillor Hess.
Yes, I know I was in the FCAMP meeting. Should have really brought it up then, to be quite honest. But I'd just like to make a request that we seek out, wherever possible, local artist or sculptor for this project. Somebody from around the Farnham area, if that's feasible. You know, local artists, we're a craft town. If we can use eventually to commission a local sculptor or artist for whatever this piece of public art might be, I think that would be, from my point of view, very preferable. Don't know what anybody else thinks. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I mean, we always do, Councillor Hess. Not always with stunning results, unfortunately, but we do actually always try to link in with local artists, local smiths, local workmen, whatever we do, we do try, and certainly with the art, you know, we'd love to do that. It doesn't always work out as we intended, but that would always be the aim. You know, it's a very local project, and we would try to get local input of that, there's no doubt. But, you know, at the end of it, if somebody's not prepared to do the work or whatever, then, you know, we have to look elsewhere. But if all things go according to plan, it will be a local artist, I'm sure.
Thank you. Councillor Mirrlees.
Can I just ask Councillor Coburn, how do you advertise it? How do you get it out to the people? I know a couple of people who I know would be fascinated to, well, they're really good sculptors and they're local people. And I just wondered where they would hear about it.
I think we're just jumping the gun a little bit, Councillor Mirrlees. When we set the group up, we'll decide what we're looking for, and then we'll put it out for whether it's a competition, whether it's you know, suggestions. We'll sort that out at the first group meeting, but it will certainly be advertised, a bit like they did for the East Street thing that Charlotte did over for Waverley, you know, so that it's put out. That went much wider because it was a much bigger project than this. This we hope will contain, you know, we've got all the contacts with the Surrey artists and all the people that UCA have contact with and Maltings, so they'll all go into the mix, and the new Ashgate Gallery. We all work together on these things, so, you know, I can assure you it will, you know, we want to get the best thing if it's going to be a bit of public art, and the Public Art Trust is so good at getting these things out. So between us, we will advertise it broadly, I can assure you of that. And then, of course, if you've got somebody, just tell them there's we're looking for ideas, you know, but that's a bit further down the line. We haven't got the group yet and we haven't met, so we're not really quite sure where it's going to be, how big, and all of this sort of thing. So once we've sorted that out, we can go out for some ideas.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, councillors. So I'll move on. The
Can
next,
I just step in, John, and say that listening to all your comments about localism and local artists, then we've taken that road for the Civic Christmas card this year, which has been prepared by a young local artist. It's contemporary and it's a view of Farnham, which is very contemporary and different. So we've actually gone down that route and chosen someone local to do something local this year. So await it in your postbox.
thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Coburn.
Just to go to warn Madam Mayor, there'll be letters about that. Modern Christmas card in Farnham. What are you thinking, Madam Mayor? Yes, get ready for your emails, everyone.
Yes.
Okay, let's carry on. The next item on this is
Yeah, we've had agreement on that recommendation of the task group. Yes, good.
Agreed. Yeah.
Next item is the draft budget. Now that's an agenda item in itself. So are we okay there, Madam Mayor, to leave that until later?
No, we'll deal with it under the substantive item, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'll move on to item 8.
But clearly we'll have to come back for the recommendation, Leader.
Well, we'll do it when we do the
Yes.
item. Yes, indeed. I'll come back to that. So next item, item 8, Farnham Infrastructure Programme. The main thing that's happened there, as the notes say, is that there's been a full investigation into the whole business about HGVs and speed and what have you in Castle Street. The consultants have come back with a report and made recommendations, and that has been accepted and will go out to consultation to the wider public in the new year, and then we hope to get progress from that point on. On the local liaison forums, we had one last night on the town centre, and a week or so before that we had one on the community aspects. So very briefly, the community aspects one was well attended, and there was quite a lively debate about a number of things. It was meant to focus on things other than the town centre roads, but inevitably, of course, people wanted to talk about that. But they did cover other things relating to climate change and, you know, the community aspects of the town centre and the wider aspects around the town as well on that. So that was a successful session. And last night's one also went very well. There were a lot of people there last night. And that was when they did have the opportunity to talk about the town centre. In the course of that meeting, we floated the main ideas that have come forward, which had sort of diagrammatic support. So Scotty's ideas were presented, ideas from the Hess family were presented, and ideas that came from myself were presented. Those were all happily received by everybody. There was a general feeling that I think there's a movement, one can say, that people are starting to realise that some adaptation to life and lifestyle is going to come along with this programme. That was heavily emphasised by the programme team in terms of what they think is necessary, appropriate, and what is coming obviously as guidance from central government, and which they have to take note of, because, you know, any funding that we go for to do with all this has to be in line with central government policy. So that's briefly what happened last night, and that's fine as far as I'm concerned. The next ones are in the new year, where we consider the major road network issues relating to the 3 projects which they've muted, which are the Hickleys and A31, the Recklesham bypass and the area around there, and all the issues relating to Upper Hale. And also in January, we've got one on involving young people, and all that happens before the next board meeting, which is later on in January. So that's a very brief overview what is happening there. I'll take a question from Sally Dixon.
Yes, it's not just a question, just so that other councillors are aware that in the wake of the infrastructure project, it has garnered, thanks to Stephen Spence and to Scotty and to other people, quite a lot of interest in Hale and Heath End, and a new residents association. They're not actually calling themselves a resident association, but I think that might be a quite good definition of what they are, called the Farnham Voice, has come together. It brings together a number of other associations that cover the 14,000 people that live in North Farnham and Bagshot-Lee. Is led by Catherine Powell, who has been involved for many years on the air pollution committees, and they have put together a community document representing a vision for North Heath and Hale. It's been circulated to members of the infrastructure project team. I do have a copy if anyone else would like to see it, but I do think this is a great step forward, that we've got all these communities coming together. They've come up with some very, I know Andy's been to some of their meetings, and yes, a great outcome of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coburn.
Yes, I just wanted to say that Catherine Powell, who used to live in the south of Farnham and sort of was always worked with us, as you say, on air quality and other things, when we were writing letters to the paper and doing other things about the effect on North Farnham, we were a bit disappointed that it wasn't really taking off. I know Councillor Fraser and I, 1 or 2 other people had said things, but I just emailed Catherine Powell on an off chance. It was an email address that was so old. And I just emailed her one afternoon or whenever and said, you know, are you aware of what's going on? And I have to take my hat off to that lady. She has done a brilliant job. You know, the next minute you have so much work. I mean, she works from home. She's working full time, but she's produced all this work. And having done North Farnham, she reckons she's going to help us out down in South Farnham. So I have to say, it's been really good to see, and the document that Sally mentioned, I mean, it's just absolutely superb. So my hat, as ever, goes off to Catherine Powell. Every time I meet her, I'm impressed. But I'm so pleased for North Farnham that they're getting the voice that we seem to have in South Farnham, and we should all work together on this because it's meant to be for the whole town.
Thank you, Councillor. So the Strategy and Finance Committee agreed to endorse the recommendations of the Farnham Board that came forward. And there's a recommendation there for you, Madam Mayor. But just to finish off on this, we're having a councillor briefing meeting ourselves so that we can update you in more detail on what's happening on this programme. And that's on the 21st in a week or so's time. So I'll just point that out. May I go to the recommendation, Madam Mayor, please?
Yes, indeed. And can I just say that Catherine is absolutely inspirational. And like Councillor Coburn, I just don't know how she achieves what she achieves to the standard that she achieves it when she is working full time. It's my ward and I have a lot to do with her. And the work that she sends out is of such a high quality that I think it will help Upper North Farnham, as they're calling it, to be recognised at last, because it is so professional. On to the recommendation. The proposal of the Farnham Infrastructure Programme Board to consult on ways of addressing the long-standing issues be welcomed. Agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll carry on to item 9, the Waverley Boundary Review. Councillors will know, I think, that there's been a presentation from the Boundary Commission to Waverley councillors on how they're going about the boundary review, and they are going to repeat that briefing to our councillors on the 25th of January. So that's a date for your diaries. And on a similar subject, but not quite there, but maybe it's a good time to mention it, we've got another councillor briefing. I know it's all a lot to do before Christmas, coming up on the 17th of this month, and that's to talk about local government reorganisation, so that we can, discuss our views on that from the town council's point of view. So, and that's the consultations area. There's another item over the page relating to council taxi and private hire review. So the meeting, the strategy and finance meeting, noted that the Waverley policy view was underway, and there's a recommendation there, Madam Mayor, please.
Yes, that the town clerk to respond to the taxi and licensing policy review in consultation with the January strategy and finance working group. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And if I may pass on to Town Clerk now for an update, please.
Thank you.
Councillor Coburn had a question. Should we deal with that one first?
Yes.
I did, sorry, I've had my hand up for some time.
Sorry, missed it, Carol.
It's not coming up as a raised hand. Are you still using that, Councillor Coburn?
Yeah, it's coming up on my screen as a
It's
raised hand.
not working, sorry.
It's
on mine.
It's on my screen.
Is it up on yours? Oh, well.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was just a very brief point about local plan part 2, which the leader glossed over. Just to say that Jenny and I have started doing this, and we're having a Zoom meeting with residents associations. We don't really think too many will want to come, but the ones that put in their own submission to it, we want to make sure that we coordinate our ideas. But if anybody does have something in their ward that specifically they want us to raise or underline, because although this is a technical consultation, anything that goes into this consultation will go to the inspector when he examines it. So we want to put in anything that will strengthen Farnham's case, especially if we get some new arrangements involving zoning and all sorts of things in the future. So anything in your ward, anywhere else for that matter, if you think it's important, make sure that we can include it in the town council's submission. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's over to the town clerk.
Thank you, Leader Mayor. I'm not going to add anything to what is in the written part of the paper, except to say that there is a recommendation emerging in the HR panel minutes. So the first item needs to be read in conjunction with that. I just want to refer to the inoculation programme. I and Ian McCready have been working with the Farnham Hospital doctors and integrated care service team to coordinate volunteers to help manage the people who are going to be going for their COVID vaccination. That starts next week. It was thought that it may start on Monday, but actually it's going to be starting, they're expecting to receive delivery of the vaccination on Thursday, and the vaccinations, the first 1,000 will be done in the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the town council is providing what sort it can, and we've got a great band of volunteers as usual assisting in the process. So I won't add anything further to that, but just thought that'd be helpful to add. Thank you. Oh, may I just say, as an update, I did have an apology today for Councillor Martin, who, as it's the first night of the late night shopping, is busy in the shop. So I must apologise that I didn't pass that on at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. So I have finished reviewing the strategy and finance notes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And the town clerk has given his update as well. Yes. So we go on to agenda item 8, which is probably the biggest item this evening, the budget for 221-22, and to agree it at Appendix D. And I think I will ask the town clerk if he will lead on this item. Thank you. Muted.
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure whether the leader might like just to do an initial few words, or would you like me to carry on, Councillor Neil?
Of course.
I think I'll leave you to kick off, and if it's, I may say something later on. Thank you.
Thank you. I may apologise to councillors that the packing of the agenda made it go the wrong way round, the budget. So it's a little bit smaller than it was when it went to strategy and finance. But hopefully you've all had a chance to digest it on screen and see the detail. The budget report is always a very important element of the council year, and the detail of this was looked at by Strategy and Finance. We are actually proposing a lower budget than we agreed for this current financial year, and there are a number of reasons for that. One of them, of course, is to recognise the significant pressures that families are facing. We can do that because we have done some careful pruning of budget headings from previous, which we've had in the last couple of years, where we feel that perhaps we've allocated the resource where we needed to, and we have a little bit of spare capacity. There is, of course, inflationary pressures. There are quite a few inflationary items which have also been having to be absorbed, and this is perhaps going to be a challenge in future years. However, we've had uncertainty over income. We've got reduction in interest rates, which will mean that our investments will give us a smaller return than we've had in previous years. We are being prudent with our income in relation to events, because we don't know whether we are going to have COVID compliant events at this time next year as well, which will reduce the number of people who can attend and therefore reduce the potential for income. We've reduced our sponsorship because we're also unsure about what level of support we will be able to bring in from our business community, also growing significantly. The budget itself has taken into account some of the additional pressures that were identified in the strategy meeting, and notably we have added in a sum of money for some additional support for the Farnham Infrastructure Programme engagement, but that will go beyond just that programme. It will go on to other things as well. And we've also added some additional funding for some of the in bloom related activities in terms of trees and sustaining the new planters that we've bought this year. But that is what we intend to offset with income from contributions as we do normally. I think councillors may have specific things which they want to reference in the budget, but we will have a shortfall to deal with in the meeting in January when we determined the precept. At the moment, we're showing a shortfall of income of about £47,459. That would represent in the region of 5% or 4.5% on the precept level if that were to be used. But there is the possibility of obviously using some reserves exceptionally this year, or potentially adjusting the income targets depending on what councillors decide tonight. So we don't decide today what the precept level would be. We're only looking at what is the right level of money that we need to deliver our services going forward. So that's the area for focus for you tonight. What is the level of expenditure that you think is necessary for us to deliver our programme? I think that's enough, Madam Mayor, if that's okay, and happy to answer questions, or Councillor Neil may wish to add things.
Councillor Neil, do you want to come in at this point?
Okay, just very briefly, I would say that you know, what the town clerk has prepared looks to me very appropriate. It is being careful not to extend our expenditure. I'm always mindful that as a council and our spending compared with councils around us, and indeed on a national level, we are quite prudent. We deliver exceptional value for money from the taxation that comes our way. So bearing all that in mind, you know, and considering whether we should ask for more next year in a slightly wider budget, or whether we should stay where we are or reduce a little bit, as the town clerk has said, we've taken the view that it's best to stay broadly where we are, and if anything, to try and, you know, save on certain items in that. So, you know, that is the broad context of how we approach the budget this year. If there's any questions on that.
I think, Councillor Neil, your strategy and finance made a recommendation to the council, and their recommendation was that the budget as provided is the one to go along with and be set for 21-22. So there was a recommendation from strategy and finance on the issue, because they had, of course, considered it. Yes, you've got a couple already. Councillor Merriweather.
Questions first, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just quickly wanted to mention an important community initiative. So there is a budget on page 27, I think, line item 4807, environmental community. It's cut off actually, initia, which actually means initiatives. As you all know, and as many of you have raised with me, thank you. Tice's Meadow is on the market and it's up for sale, which is a matter of deep concern. There are a number of initiatives, some of which I can't talk about, underway to see what can be done to secure the community purchase of the site. It might be appropriate, I'd like to suggest, that the council consider using some of this particular budget, possibly even only as a loan, to an appropriate security. I understand that that's something that the town clerk might need to do some investigation work on. But I'd like to suggest now that with your consent, that we ask Ian to do that.
Thank you. No response. Councillor Coburn, please.
Add something to that?
Yes, Ian, please.
Right.
Just to say that this is something that we could bring back to a subsequent meeting. I think it is something that we should look at. I can do so offline and in between this and the next meeting, perhaps update strategy and finance at the next meeting. The budget line that Councillor Merriweather has referenced does actually have some funds remaining this financial year, so there is scope for council to support it if it wished to do so. But we have time to come back with a bit more information and make a decision on that. But it's helpful to have the pointer to do that in between, if that's what council wishes us to do.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I mean, I fully support, it's not why I put my hand up, Councillor Merriweather. I have actually spoken to the town clerk about what we can actually legally do to support this, because, you know, I think it's such an important initiative. And in fact, at some point, we should really sit down and look at all the initiatives that are going on and need our support, because there's a heck of a lot of community projects out there, and, you know, just doing them a little bit at a time on SIL. What always worries me at staffing, at budget time, is staffing. I get the impression at the moment, and I may be wrong, that, you know, the staff are really overworked at the moment. And, you know, I do hope whenever we set a budget and however we pay for it, that we make sure we don't pare down the budget, the staffing budget, because in an organisation the size of this, if you get 2 or 3 heavy demands, and I may be speaking out of turn, but as far as I can see, the FIP seems to be sucking the life out of all sorts of other things that are going on. It's because, you know, it's creating a lot of work. And, you know, all these things, we've got to keep our core services going through, but we've also got to maintain healthy members of staff. So whatever we do with our budget, please, can we not pare down too far on the staff budget? Because I really do think we've perhaps reached at some point this year the bottom of it. And we really need to give the staff, you know, we need to staff this to give the service we want. We need to staff it totally and fairly, and encourage our staff, you know, to be here, to be healthy and to enjoy what they're doing, not to be run off their feet, because I think at the moment 1 or 2 of them are. Thank you.
Thank you. Town Clerk.
Can I just, I know other councillors may wish to make additional comments. I see Councillor Atfield there. I mean, we have looked at the budget, and we've the way that we manage the staffing budget is to look at the demands and make an assumption about the scale points that staff members are on, and there's a little bit of flexibility on that. So, because of the unusual circumstances of this year, we've not really increased it. We've only made a very small notional increase, but reduced a couple of the other supplementary areas which we normally use in lieu of staff, such as the contracted services budget. But we feel that there is sufficient there to cope with the additional staffing that we've talked about. I think this is an exceptional year, and if there are additional pressures and members felt we could add any extra resource to the staffing complement, we would be able to recommend to you that we used exceptionally some of the reserves to do that. So I think we have sufficient to deliver what members wish to do. It has been an exceptionally difficult year. I think thank you for your kind words, Councillor Coburn. And the staff have done a magnificent job, I think, under very difficult circumstances. And we are a bit more strained by actually working remotely. It's an odd thing that that sort of office interaction that you get, you can actually deal with quite a lot of things quite quickly when people bump into each other in the office. And it takes a little bit longer when you're doing that remotely. And so we are looking forward to a time when perhaps we can be a bit more connected with each other. But the support of councillors throughout this year has been very much appreciated by staff. So you know, you've done a lot to help and to motivate people. So thanks for that.
Town Clerk, can I ask a question, which is that I've noted that the government has said no increments other than the National Health Service next year. And I'm assuming that means cost of living increments. So when you've prepared that staffing budget, has it, was it before the government made this statement, in which case there are cost of living increases included in the budget?
There are no cost of living increases included because we were aware of the government statement about living. We don't normally actually put in a cost of living increase, maybe a 1% last year, because we were expecting, we knew what the National Negotiating Committee were looking at, but that was absorbed within the budget last year. Individual increments for members of staff are included within the budget, and the way that we calculate the budget is with an assumption of increments that staff may be payable. This, remember, is not done on time served, but it is done on performance. So not every member of staff will get an increment every year. That is something that is reviewed and then considered each time. And so there is sufficient money within the budget to pay any increments that we decide are appropriate, but we're not making an assumption for a national pay agreement, no.
I asked the question because I wondered whether we had that bit of flexibility in there because it was done prior to the announcement. But I think you've just said that you were aware of that. So there isn't that flexibility because it's not included. Thank you. Next question, Councillor Mirrlees.
Can I just ask, because it's not really about money, but it's about the staff themselves. Are we going to, I mean, we've got Claire who's come in. Is she staying temporarily? Are we going to have people, I feel a bit lost, I have to say, because I've lost people I was working quite closely with for the young people's task group, sorry. And I just wondered if Claire is going to be a more permanent member of staff, or are we losing her again? Because it's just, I just wondered what's happening with that staffing and whether or not we will be, I don't know, are we going to have a more permanent member of staff, or is she going to stay with us? Or I just need that support, to be honest, with the sort of stuff I'm doing.
Yes, Councillor Mirrlees, you will have a member of staff supporting you. That person is Claire, as you know, currently. Claire is on a temporary contract. We have interviews next week for the substantive post. We don't know whether that will be successful or not. But you'll see in the report from the HR panel that there are some proposals there around the staffing, and in particular about the senior staffing levels, which you're referencing. So it's probably not appropriate for me to talk more about that just now, but that is something you may wish to do when we go into the exempt session.
Okay, thanks.
Right, so there's no other hands up. Councillor Atfield, your hand was up. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to thank Carol for her concerns about the staffing levels and the staff, but just to assure her that we are continually reviewing the efforts of the staff and the need for staff with the town clerk on a regular basis. We don't just take it for granted that the staff are there and they're getting on with the job. We do have concerns about the pressures and the current situation on our staff. So we have that in mind, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you. So are there more questions on the format and figures in the proposed budget before we vote on whether we agree it? And it's this budget that will go forward to the January meeting when the precept is considered as to how the items in the budget can be financed. So if you're ready to vote, could you indicate whether you agree the budget at Appendix B? It's a budget of £1,399,850, and that's for 21-22. All those who support it agree.
Agreed. Agreed.
Anybody voting against? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right. If we move on to 9, planning and licensing, I don't think we have Councillor Edmonds with us this evening. Is there anyone else from that working group who will be presenting the minutes of the planning and licensing consultative group?
Town Clerk, did we hear from Brian Edmonds?
Sorry?
I was wondering whether we had apologies from Brian Edmonds.
Oh, he's not here. He's not going to give them, is he?
Yes, I think we were all expecting him to be here, so no one else is deputising for him specifically.
And there is a request. I have seen an email of a request for a change to one of the items on the agenda tonight. So I know that was sent to Councillor Edmonds, which is about the a new comment for item 2020-1744, which is an application of various conditions, which was not an NMA. So I need to perhaps raise that with you, but somebody else may wish to introduce the notes first.
The members of that group, David Beeman, Roger Blishan, Alan Earwaker, Scotty Fraser, George Hess, and John Neal. There's generally speaking no questions on those minutes. Is anyone prepared to present them? Who is on that working group, please?
Madam Mayor, if no one else wants to.
Thank you.
As you say, I don't think there's anything particular to draw attention to that I'm aware of. If councillors have got anything they want to bring up, they could please do so. If not, I would recommend they're accepted.
Right. And the dates of those meetings are the 2nd November, the 16th of November, the 30th of November. Are they agreed? Scotty, Councillor Fraser. Can you unmute? Can't hear you.
There.
Yes, can now.
I was trying to use the hand facility on participants, but it clearly didn't work. Only 2 items which have been particularly emotive during the last month. And I commented directly, privately, to the planning committee at Waverley on them. They came up on the same meeting. One was the hot blossom seat, which was taken away. It was removed. And the other concerned the telephone kiosk, which seems inevitable. This is in the wrong place and it's probably going to be the wrong kiosk. I thought that it was a scandalous waste of time to discuss those 2 items. They were decided quite clearly within the Farnham Consultative Group. They went forward to Waverley and they're discussed again. And I fear that they've been put on one side and they are due to be discussed for a 3rd time. I feel that with all the planning and licensing that we do, we need to spend more time considering carefully the items which are more important. And Farnham, and particularly Waverley, Western Area Planning Committee, should endeavour to waste less time on smaller items of less importance, which can be quite clearly dealt with by the consultative group, and they could just tick them through. But I don't know whether I was met with any acclaim on that statement, but it certainly was the only item that I was asked to prepare a paper for, and it was the one that I felt most strongly about. Otherwise, I think the planning committee, the consultative group, does a sterling job. I shouldn't say that for myself, but I particularly congratulate Jenny on the work that she does in sorting through a very large agenda. And you can see here the papers that have been produced. It is a matter of some congratulations needed for that young lady. I hope you would agree with me.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I second that.
Have you finished, Scotty?
Oh, yeah, I did say thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, just to say, I'm on the Waverley Western Planning Committee, and the group was put into an extremely difficult situation, and it was not one that any of the members wanted to be in. We did debate the issues of the benches outside the Hops Blossom for at least 20 minutes. We even had the neighbours who came and said that the benches were acceptable and didn't make that much noise as long as it was just 2 benches. We came to an agreement that we would support the reinstatement of the benches, only then to be told by one of the officers that actually we didn't have the power to make that decision, that it had to go in front of licensing. And there was also a question of who the pavement belonged to. So this was, I then made the case in writing subsequent to the chairman and at the meeting that we should be in favour, give Hops Blossom the benefit of the doubt and allow them to carry on trading with the benches. However,
excuse me, can I just come in on a point of order, Councillor Dixon? Because if you're not careful, you're going to stray into something that you shouldn't do as a member of the planning committee at Waverley. We shouldn't be stating any of our views in public other than at that committee meeting. So I'm sorry to sound like the teacher warning you, but just be careful, because otherwise you won't be able to sit on the committee when we determine this when it comes back.
I just say the committee, the Western Planning Committee, was not able to make a decision because it had to go before the licensing committee, and that actually flew in the face of the discussions that took place there. That's all I would say.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coburn.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I didn't really mean to indicate. I can't remember. It was all so long ago, but if it comes back to me, I'll put my hand up again. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Beeman. Can you unmute, Councillor Beeman?
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Yeah. Thank you very much. As chair of the Western Planning Committee, I would just like to make a point that the reason why we had to discuss these items was because they were both recommended for approval. And basically, I mean, and I don't want to go into too much detail, because particularly one, the benches are still it was deferred decision. But I mean, that was the reason why they came before the committee. I mean, and otherwise they've gone through without any debate at all. The phone box, in fact, was refused. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Coburn, you've remembered.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It was really about the different roles of the two committees that when Councillor Fraser was speaking. And I think sometimes I do worry about the points that are made by the planning committee at the town are, to me, sometimes not personal enough, because they don't have to be professional. They don't actually have to quote policy. That's up to the committee to do that. We know the MPPF and the local plan part 1 and the local policies, the neighbourhood plan and the design statement. That's what we're meant to know, and we know. So sometimes I think we should make this really personal when you're going through these. I agree with Councillor Fraser that the load is ridiculous and it has to be sifted, and Jenny does a fantastic job on that. But, you know, when we go into further down the line with applications, it is the local town and parish council that carries a lot of weight if they have made the points that are very peculiar to the local council, as it were, if you see what I mean, and not get involved in some of the, I was just reading one, it was all to do with a transport management plan. I mean, the fact that actually for that development it wouldn't work anyway, I don't think it does our cause any good. And I think a bit of passion in the town council's submission is no bad thing, because we are just the man in the street. I know we're a consultee, but you know, we're not supposed to have too much expertise at that level. And I honestly think an honest appraisal of character and the difference it's going to make to that particular road or the effect on the neighbours is much more important than trying to do the planning committee's role, which, as I say, fine if you're geared up for it, but if you're not, I think it rather undermines what you're putting in. I think the two roles are very different, and I don't think we should be confusing them. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to hear passionate views about these things. So I think I can say that the notes of those meetings have all been received, and obviously points of debate. Town Clerk.
Just go back to the one point that was drawn to my attention prior to the meeting. There was an item on Short Heath and Boundstone, number 1744, which is 35 Pied Cottage. There was discussion at the planning licensing working group, which amplified the point, but it's not been included in the agenda for today. So I'll just read it to you so you can be aware of the full response that has gone off to Waverley Borough Council, and subject to council being content with it, that's what will stand, which is that Farnham Town Council has no objections subject to the alterations being confirmed compliant with the Farnham Design Statement and Farnham Neighbourhood Plan Policy FNP 16 extensions, residential extensions SPD, and LPP1 policy CC1 climate change and CC2 sustainable construction and design, and materials being in keeping with existing. Space must be available on site for construction vehicles and materials. COVID-19 site operating procedures must be followed, and WBC approved construction hours adhered to. You will note that that is an amplification of what is in the agenda, which only said that we only had one thing that it had to comply with, but the consultative group wanted these additional points raised, so those have been included.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Yes, sorry, Madam Mayor, I meant to say that I think it's really important that the Town Council goes over to, well, joins in the Zoom, but, you know, takes part in the Western Area meeting. I always think councillors are very moved, interested, you know, really take the town and parish council opinion very, very seriously. So I think any time that we have the opportunity of going over to strengthen the case for a local application, I think is really important. And I think, you know, we should take up every opportunity that we have to go, keep us about going over, but to be on the meeting and strengthen the town council's case. I think we've got, you know, good brains, and I think we should put the case strongly and passionately at the council. I think it will have a great deal of effect on the councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody will take that on board. Right. I had a challenge that we would finish at 8 o'clock. I didn't think we would, and it's 10 past 8. So I don't think there probably is too much more. We move on to part 2, which are items to note. So first one, actions taken under the scheme of delegation. Town Clerk?
We covered them, I think, at the meeting. Thank you.
Good, right. Reports from other councils. Whose hand's going up first? Have we got anything from Waverley? You're muted, John.
I'm muted and I can't raise my hand. I appear to be suffering greatly this evening. However, yes, Madam Mayor. Coming up or going on at Waverley, a number of things. At the next Waverley Council on Tuesday next week, the new corporate strategy will be presented and voted on. Something of more interest locally is the Boundary Commission, as you all know, are insisting on doing a review of the boundaries of Waverley. They are also currently doing a review of the boundaries of Guildford. This seems let us say, not the most opportune time to do it in the view of these threats of unitary councils emanating from Westminster. But far be it from me to suggest they had a bit of time on their hands. But anyway, they are reviewing us with the aim of having new boundaries in existence before the 2023 elections. We don't actually expect any big changes, but I may be shot down later for that. The first thing the Boundary Commission asked us for is, how many councillors do we think we need? Quite an interesting way of doing it. It seems to me slightly cart before horse, but that is the first question. So we are establishing a cross-party group to look at the large questionnaire we've been sent. And our hope is that the cross-party group will come up with an agreed view to go forward as a Waverley Council agreed view. And you write about, I think it's about 6 pages of notes on the thing, but the only thing you actually say is, we would like so many councillors, which seems a very long-winded way of asking a short question, answering a short question. The Boundary Commission then go away. They think about what we've done. It's their review. It's not our review. They can ignore us. They can listen to us. They can increase it. They can decrease it. They can do what they like. And they then bring a report back to us. The only thing they've told us is it is only within the current boundaries. They don't look about changing boundaries outside of Waverley, and they do not look at changing current parish boundaries. But they do, I forget what their phrase was, but they do look at the actual boundaries of the various wards. And there are some wards that are overrepresented in the terms of people in the ward per councillor, which is a thing they look at quite a lot. They told me they don't look at the geography of the ward, which I find very strange, because I would have thought a larger ward actually probably would merit less councillors, less people per councillor, because it involves a lot of travelling around, but they tell me they don't. Anyway, we are establishing this group to look at it. We are hoping to have an agreed Waverley view. If we don't have an agreed Waverley view, then obviously the various political elements will put in their own. There is nothing to stop Joe Bloggs in the street, or even the man on the Clapham omnibus, if he happens to come from Farnham, of putting in their own suggestions. So it's pretty broad and pretty open. But as I say, we are hoping, and we shall see what happens, to put in a one view from the council. COVID is obviously taking up a lot of our time. We are looking at establishing vaccination centres across the borough. There are talks about a certain place in Farnham, Hazelmere, there is talks there. Cranley is fairly settled, and Godalming is still a bit up in the air, but we are hopefully close to coming to an agreement with the NHS on where these centres will be. And it seems they're hoping that vaccinations will start in some of these places next week. They may be a little hopeful, but hopefully it will start going. As you know, Waverley is currently in Tier 2, as is the whole of Surrey. Waverley residents have been remarkably careful, abiding by the restrictions, and the rate in Waverley is coming down, down, down. But unfortunately, the rates in various other parts of Surrey are not following likewise. Some of the boroughs nearer London are over 200 cases per 100,000. Waverley, we got down to about 60. I think it might have sort of staggered up a little since then, but it's certainly very low compared to many of our friends around. I'm making the argument that if Slough can be picked out as a single case of a high, very high area, then there's no reason why Waverley, and interestingly, perhaps some of the Hampshire boroughs around us, could not be, I use the word carefully, rewarded for their observance of the regulations and put in a lower tier. I think I'm going to lose that argument because I think the government is committed to county council-wide tiers, and I think the county council supports them in that. Just before we went into lockdown, Waverley was in tier 1 and was on the verge of going into tier 2. And I managed to persuade them that we should stay in tier 1, but of course 2 or 3 days later we all went into lockdown anyway, so it was really of not much use. The great unitary debate, or the great unitary debate that wasn't, as you know, the 11 boroughs and districts hired KPMG initially to put together a rival bid to Surrey. Unfortunately, of course, halfway through the process, the Surrey was put on the back burner. So the impetus and the focus of that bid had to change rather. And it is no secret, perhaps, that when we were all under the cosh of a potential Surrey bid, we all got on extremely well. When the fear factor or the fright of Surrey not going ahead, some of the old differences emerged. We still seem to be putting together a reasonably cogent report, which basically says, as I think we would all expect it to say, you need to cooperate or you need to go bust. And it is suggesting various ways in which we could cooperate, and we hope to see the final report late next week. As a precursor to that, we are discussing with our nearest and dearest, being Guildford, what we can do together in the short term and what our aims are in the long term. And I think that is about it from Waverley. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to mention 2 Surrey issues, both of which are financial related and how they might relate to Farnham. Surrey, as probably a number of people already know, have launched this Your Fund Surrey, which is a community projects fund. And the project fund will have 100 million over 5 years, which comes to 20 million a year. And if you actually work out how that would be distributed, if it was distributed evenly amongst the 80 divisions in Surrey, it would come to about $250,000 a year. That means there's 3 divisions in Farnham. So if it was distributed equally, Farnham would stand to gain something like $750,000 a year, which isn't an insignificant amount of money. They are trying to create a lot of excitement and buzz, as they call, about this, and it's not going to be distributed equally. We're going to have to bid for these funds, in fact, and people need to be made aware of that. We've all been sent, the Surrey councillors, posters to distribute and postcards to distribute. But more importantly, there is actually information on the Surrey website, and some people may already know this, but for people who don't know of it, I'll actually send the link round to all councillors later on, because it's got all the information about how to bid for projects, what the timescales are, what the criteria are, etc., etc. Sorry? I thought I heard somebody say something. That's that. I think we need to be aware of this. We need to be making people aware of it, and we need to generate appropriate bids. I'm worried that they're creating over-excitement about it, and there's going to be far too many bids coming in from all over Surrey, and I think that's quite likely to happen. because they're saying things on the poster, things like, what would you do with 100 million in your community? A local swimming pool, collaborative workspace, football pitch, and that sort of thing. Well, we're not going to get 100 million in our community. The 100 million is for the whole of Surrey across 5 years. So I think they're overhyping it, in fact. But regardless of that, it is important that we put effort in Surrey. There's 250,000 available for each division, roughly. It's not going to be equally distributed. So that's my comments about that. The second thing I wanted to comment on, actually, and again, it's money related, in that I'm on a select committee at Waverley. It's called it's called the Community Environment and Highways Committee. In fact, I'm one of the deputy chairman of that committee. And we were reviewing today the Surrey's next year budget and the medium-term financial plan covering 5 years. And in these figures, there's money for expenditure on capital projects in the environment, transport and infrastructure area. And that's something like 500 million over the 5 years of already approved projects. But there's another large sum of money for projects that are being worked on and so on. And in that, there's a very large sum of money shown for Farnham, in fact. It's over £100 million, in fact, and that's actually generated quite a lot of interest. Sorry, people are beginning to say, my colleagues are saying, why is Surrey getting all this money? And so is Farnham getting all this money? And all I'm saying to them, well, it's not enough, actually, because we're planning to spend even more than that. So that's just to let you know that there's serious sums of money being talked about that will come from Surrey, for Farnham as part of this infrastructure project, and they'll be bidding for money elsewhere from central government, etc., etc. So I think that puts the Farnham infrastructure project into a little bit of context. It's still very much a project being worked on, and so it's in the medium-term financial plan as a possibility. It's not actually totally allocated money, but it's a very large part of the money that isn't yet allocated. I just thought that might be of interest to people. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Town clerk is going to be busy putting these bits together, isn't he?
Well, it has to be done by, I'm sure the town council will be supporting these bids, but it has to be done by the community groups, so the groups that are actually bidding for the money.
Right.
Could I ask something?
Yeah,
yes,
Councillor
Hess.
Could I ask Councillor MacLeod something?
Yes.
Obviously, we're very keen to get active travel network established, which is going to take county money, because largely it's going to fall to Surrey highways. Obviously, roads and pavements will be incorporated into any active travel routes. Is there a particular time or way of bidding for this?
Well, the thing I can say about that is that the government did ask county council level councils to bid for active travel schemes, and Surrey did put in a bid for active travel schemes, and they've been allocated something like 6.5 million, but they've got something like 10 schemes that they're currently having evaluated that would cost a total of 7.5 million. So and one of these is in Farnham, and it's a scheme that would run very much from the station across the Hickory's Corner, up South Street, along Berelli Walk, and round past the sports centre and into East Street, and it would link up with other cycling routes in Farnham. So these schemes are all being evaluated, and another consideration would be in the future, and this is something that you brought up before, George, when the temporary construction access bridge is taken away in 2023 and replaced by a new pedestrian type bridge. One of the things that's now being discussed is whether that should also be a bridge for cycling. So there'd be a cycling route into Brightwells. That's a bit of a problem in terms of the government money, by the way, because the government's putting timescales and all this on all these schemes that have got to be implemented quicker than 2023. So there's a problem there. But that's all being looked at, George. That's a quite separate thing from the other things I've just been discussing. And that is now part of the Farnham infrastructure project, actually, whether or not we bid for this cycling route.
May I just respond to that, Madam Mayor?
Sorry, Ash, I'll keep quiet.
No,
it's up to the Mayor to answer your question, not me.
Could I just come back on that, Madam Mayor? To
briefly, yes. There's two people who've had their hands up for a long time.
Okay. I didn't see any of those hands. Obviously, I think it's brilliant, really good initiatives, and it's great there's money there. First time in a long time. And of course, if the Borelli Bridge can be incorporated or topped up with extra money, we could end up with a beautiful bridge there, and not a basic one. And you know, that's something I'm very keen that we do get something really that sets off that area, because Borelli Walk should be brought back to a really prime condition and beautiful, replanted with some lovely trees, and brought up to a very high standard. Thank you.
Theoretically, Councillor Neil had his hand up, and I'm assuming that he wants to talk about Farnham Town Council, but also Councillor Coburn. Councillor Coburn, do you want to deal with anything about Surrey and what Councillor MacLeod is?
Oh God, I've had enough of Surrey, thanks very much. No, I was actually wanting to go on to the outside bodies. So when we eventually get round to that, I would very much like to talk about the outside bodies, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Neil.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to come back to Councillor Ward, whose Waverley thing, and just ask if he's got any clarity as to how the vaccination programme coming down through NHS into Waverley relates to the CCG vaccination programme that's now up and running in Farnham. Do you know that, John?
Yes, they are starting something in Farnham, but they are still looking for another site, which will be, let's say, larger and with a bigger throughput. So we are hopeful that we can get that set up for them as well, because obviously they are somewhat limited where they are.
Okay, thank you.
Right. In that case, we can, I think, go on to outside bodies, and Councillor Coburn is at the top of the list.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In your summary of what you've been doing, you forgot to mention the Farnham Sports Council Awards.
Oh, thank you.
You and I were both at recently, and I have to again express my admiration for David Gill. There are certain people in Farnham, we've mentioned Catherine Bell, mentioned David Gill, who just have endless energy, and it doesn't matter what stands in their way. COVID, what's COVID? We'll still do our Sports Council Awards. And I thought it was brilliant. And I sincerely hope that the Herald does them justice, not this week, but next week, and that perhaps we can put something on our website as well, because really, you know, to keep these clubs going with all the difficulties they've had has been marvellous. And for David to put on this Zoom presentation with Madam Mayor there, I mean, it was just lovely. I mean, most of us would have said, oh, don't bother, let's leave it. But David never says no, and it was just lovely. I have promised Noel Moss, Town Clerk, that I would mention Swift Bricks on behalf of the Biodiversity Action Group, because they're getting nowhere with Debbie. She keeps coming back with things that are half a dozen years old. You know, basically, where are we with Swift Bricks in Brightwells? And if you could let me know, I'll pass that on to the Biodiversity Group, who are, as you know, writing an action plan, which is going to be superb. And finally, there's good news on the Bourne Pavilion. For those of you who know anything about this, in the Bourne, we have loads of organisations, all of whom use the Bourne Pavilion on the Bourne Green. We had some funding, which unfortunately, because of circumstances, was removed, although I have to say that funder put in a huge amount of money for exploration and consultants or whatever. But we are now launching a really big Bourne Pavilion movement. It's everybody, it's all the Blades runners, it's all the organisations in the Bourne, kicking it off on Saturday. But basically, we're going to go ahead for this Bourne Pavilion, which we have promised. It is so important because the existing pavilion is probably a health hazard, certainly not a thing of beauty. And we're hoping this will be of advantage, will help out so many organisations. It'll be a great project. Those of you know, I chair the St Martin's Hall group, which has St Martin's Hall near the church on the green. It'll be a wonderful community project. I certainly sent over the details of Surrey the instant I heard about it, but they'd got other forms of funding as well. So it's all going on in the Bourne. It's all about health and getting people outside and doing things. And I think it's really good news. So if the town clerk would just get these Swift bricks organised, then I shall have a bit of peace. Thanks very much.
Yes, I will just jump in there. How David Gill would never forgive me for missing off the sports awards, because in fact these were the only sports awards that were being held, the awards for the whole of Surrey. The rest of them had given up and they couldn't do it, and our Farnham sports committee did, and it was like being at the BAFTA awards, because I had the envelopes with the winners in them, and so I had to open the envelopes and pull it out and then say, and the award goes to whatever. So they really had organised it extremely well, and they really done extremely well. Right, Councillor Attfield, your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to Carol's comment about Swift bricks. In our notes to tonight, page 22, item 11, the town clerk's update, the town clerk confirmed that Swift bricks were being used. And that's with reference to Brightwells. Thank you.
Come back, Carol.
I think this is the usual problem of communications, because the group got in touch with Debbie, who was in theory in touch with the town clerk, but what she sent out to them was no reassurance that the Swift bricks were actually being installed. She just sent out something from, as I say, weeks, if not months ago. So basically, I just really wanted an update on whether or not the proposed Swift bricks are actually being incorporated into the buildings that are being built as we speak.
Any other outside bodies report?
Respond? Would it be helpful if I responded, Madam Mayor?
Right. Sorry.
Would it be helpful if I just quickly responded to that?
Yes, please do.
Councillor Coburn may well have a point. Maybe I was too reassured by the email I had in November, which said that Crest are adding the Swift bricks into the scheme. I will, however, given that there seems to be continued doubt, not continued gout, follow this up to make sure that it is being progressed.
Thank you very much. I have two representations. One is on the Maltings, who've just held their virtual AGM. Don't know whether that's a background noise, but it's certainly not here.
Sounds like Michaela.
Kika, did you want to say anything? No, you think it's Michaela, although she's muted. Okay. Yes, so they had their AGM, and since that, I don't know how many people are aware that Gavin actually has tested positive for COVID, and I think the link was one of the performers at the Maltings. So it just goes to show how careful one needs to be. And the second AGM that I've got coming up is the Hale Community Centre, who again, they have been so proactive during this time, and I'm really, praise is not enough for them. So they're functioning and the figures look okay, because a lot of the problems can be financial, but 2 AGMs as far as I'm concerned. Anybody else? Roger.
Just a very quick one because time's creeping on. Brightwell's Gostrey, they're still doing the Meals on Wheels, of course, but they would like to move back into the centre of town. We don't know if this is feasible at the moment or financially possible even, but you know, it's something they've asked us to look at, so we will do. And they're still on their service level agreement at the moment. Thank you,
Right.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right, moving on, date of next meeting, Thursday, the 21st of January, 2021, when we will be setting the precept. Yes, Town Clerk.
Could I just also, Madam Mayor, take this opportunity to say to members that when we have our informal briefing next Thursday, we would like to have the sign off of the South Street Trust accounts. So we'll hold a very short AGM type meeting for the South Street Trust just to agree the accounts, which can therefore go to the independent examiner. Apologies, that's not happened already. COVID got in the way, but we'd like to do it just for 5 or 10 minutes before the meeting next week.
Yeah. So that and the quorum for that will be what, Town Clerk?
It's the normal quorum for council. So
Yeah. Okay. Because members need to turn up for it. Is really what I'm getting at. You know, otherwise we're not quorate. So if you can, you know, 10 minutes before is 6:20 because we're meeting at 6 o'clock, aren't we? Fine. Right.